Right, before this episode begins, we are currently pushing towards 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. And I mean, we're battling the League One Lowdown boys for it. We want to get to 1,000 before they do. And we'd quite like to win that battle. So, yeah, if you do enjoy our content, you want to be the first to hear about everything we're doing, then please do press that big red button. And I mean, it costs you absolutely nothing. And we'll make sure it's worth your while. So, yeah, let's get on to the episode. Right, welcome back to Fourth Tier Fever, and yeah, somehow I've been put in charge again. I'm not really with it. I don't want to be here, to be honest. My team has just found a way to lose a game that we shouldn't have lost for like the millionth time this season, but we're rolling with it. And thankfully, I'm not alone, so we don't have to spend the entire time talking about my team. I'm joined by Jordan. Obviously, had a bit of an interesting game. How are you feeling, mate?
I prefer not to talk about. Can we just cut all this rubbish? Talk about Greeny's goal. I can't express you enough. You know, how the audacity to do it. I know I'm getting too ahead of myself. I'm just trying to ignore what the final result was because it was all going so well after 85 minutes. And I've left you to do this one because I am in no mood. I'll be honest. I am in no mood at all. A bit like you, really. This is the third time we're trying this.
Yeah, but we've definitely not had tons of outtakes where I've just messed up the intro again and again and again. But I'm trying to forget football exists again. I'm back on that arc. But we are also joined by Jake, who apparently is a bit happier than we are. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Nice win on Friday night makes the weekend a lot easier. Knowing you've got 3 points, watching all the scores have been what's been an eventful week in League Two, to say the least.
It has been eventful, but imagine actually winning a game. Honestly, grow up. But before we get into the actual games themselves, there are a couple of things I need to very quickly mention. The first of which is actually a big one. So if you haven't seen it already, Kieran and I interviewed Andy Woodman, of course, the Bromley manager, the other day, and that's up everywhere, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. That is up right now, and honestly, even if you're not a Bromley fan, it's worth a listen. He's a really interesting guy, a really lovely guy as well. Actually, I think if you do give it a listen, it'll probably change your perspective on what you think of him. It was certainly an eye opener for me and a thoroughly enjoyable experience. But moving on to today's episode and the content that's going to be involved in that, we are going to be purposely skipping 2 games today. We're skipping the 2 relegation games, the Tranmere, Accrington, Morecambe, and Carlisle. That's all going to be. We're going to have a deeper look at that over in the midweek episode. So if you are interested to see what's going on there, that's going to be one you want to stay tuned in for. But of course, there's still so much to talk about, and it's straight into the promotion race, isn't it? There's only really one game we could kick things off with here, and that's the Swindon and Bradford game. I mean, 5-4 is a ridiculous scoreline. It's certainly not one I think anyone would have expected in any capacity, especially not with Swindon coming out on top of that one. I mean, you can. I think that I mean there was a clip doing the round of that winning goal, and let's say the gamesmanship at the end of it, for want of a better word.
Tier. That is
Yeah,
fantastic. You've got to commend it.
Oh, honestly, I'm so here for things like that. I love that sort of thing. But aside from this sort of general sort of fun that was happening around the end of that game, I mean, what do we think of it? How do you even react to Swindon beating Bradford 5-4? Be my experts.
Well, I was obviously keeping an eye on this one in the pub in Harrogate. And I mean, what a game of football. I mean, 5-4 is not a scoreline that you see a great deal. They're awful to be on the wrong end of it, but the best way, if you know, it's the best scoreline if you are, because at least fans are entertained. There might have been 1 or 2 maybe seeking like emergency help in that, but no, I mean, what a game of football it was. I mean, I think straight away, I think you've got to feel sorry for Callum Kavanagh. When do you score a hat-trick and your team doesn't win the game? Is quite interesting. Obviously, you know, it had near enough everything, didn't it? 9 goals, a red card in there, pretty daft one. I'm going to be honest, and I think that's cost Bradford. the one from Richie Smallwood, and someone like him, I think, should probably know better. Especially when they were 2-0 up early on as well. They had a brilliant start to the game, and this Swindon team, especially at home, they've been terrific. Under Holloway, they've just got better and better as time goes on, haven't they? And there's certainly there's certainly a load of goals in their games. I think, it was something that I pointed out to my mates yesterday. In some of the games that they've had quite recently. They've had a 3-3 draw with Cheltenham. A couple of 2-2 draws to Doncaster and Salford. They drew with Port Vale 3-3. They beat Swindon 5. They beat Carlisle 5-1. Sorry. So they're just they know where the back of the net is. They do concede a fair few. Their season's pretty much done. I mean, look, 73% possession and 27 shots against this Bradford side, albeit down to 10 men. No mean feat. And it's a great way to win it at the end. And it's heartbreak for Bradford, so to speak. I think they'll be disappointed for the fact, going into the 90th minute, 4-3. It would have been a brilliant win with 10 men. And you can see that, Swindon were coming at them, just unable to hold on. And I mean, obviously the celebrations at the end with the players and everything as well. And like I said, so much time in the world for it. But I mean, look, it was clearly the game of the day. Terrific game of football, and Swindon got 3 points at the end of it.
Well, yeah, exactly that. I mean, it was a very well fought game, and I don't know. I think you kind of alluded to it with the red card. It's just disappointing, especially because it is a big game. Because every game's a big game at this stage. You've got to get the mentality right. And I think Smallwood on that occasion, he's let himself down, let his team down.
It's just the situation of it. Is that they're 2-0 up in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
away from home against a side that are quite good at home. And
well, yeah, exactly. And I suppose it's the strength of that team as well. Like, as you say, with being 2-0 up, there is no situation in the world where you need to go and be that reckless. They weren't in a position to need to worry about that sort of thing. But I mean, they put up a very good fight regardless, to be fair, with 10 men, and I think that's still commendable. Obviously, heartbreak at the end, all the rest of it. But then going forward, also, I mean, they're pretty clinical, to be fair. They had 6 shots on target, and 4 of them have gone in. What do you think we should take from this game to do with Bradford and their mentality, Jake?
Yeah, they just didn't get over the line in that game. And I've actually got a question for you. Sorry to just ignore what you asked. Do you think there is such thing as pressure in an early kickoff game? Because it certainly felt like they could have perhaps felt that a little bit, knowing that you can win, stay top of the league no matter what. Do you think they did feel
that? It's an interesting thought, but at the same time, I don't know. There's still a few games to go at that stage. I think either way, it was going to be a case of everyone's focusing on their games. They're only playing slightly before everyone else. It's not like you're going to have all these other teams sat there watching them play or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe there's a slight element of it, but you'd like to think that professional footballers wouldn't get too affected by just kicking off slightly earlier than normal, personally. But
yeah, I'm not sure I buy it. I'm not sure I buy it, if I'm going to be honest. I think, this Bradford team's got a lot of credit in the bank. They've done well in recent weeks. Obviously, recently, maybe, they've had a couple of 1 or 2 iffy results, but, it still shouldn't take away from what they've done. I just think, they're professional footballers. They should be able to play whenever and adjust their mentality to suit the situation. Maybe there's I don't know, Doncaster and Wimbledon. You could still sort of catch them. Doncaster can in particular. I think maybe that might have played a part, but at the same time, I'm not too sure how much of a part. It's not something I think is a valid thing, if I'm going to be honest, because it's just how it is, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I don't think it should have that great of an impact. That I don't know. I don't think there's too much in it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that wasn't the only team. Swindon weren't the only team to score 5 goals. Port Vale put 5 past Bromley. Yeah, Sorry, Andy, we appear to be a bad luck charm for you. Apparently so, anyway. But I mean, 5-star performance, 5 goals, as routine as it gets, and really sort of stamping your authority on the promotion race. And with so few games left to go, I mean, they're looking formidable, aren't they?
They are, yeah, and they're ramping up the heat when it truly matters. 6 wins out of the last 7 now. Obviously, we mentioned about that bad luck charm for Andy Woodman. It feels like a thing with Bromley. We mentioned this before we started recording. When we did the interview with David Artell, the game after that was against Bromley, in which we went on and beat 1-0. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure Andy thinks we'll have too much credit left in his bank after this, but no, you can't ask for much more as a Port Vale fan. Obviously with Bradford losing in the early kickoff as well. 3 points clear with 4 games left to go. 5-star performance, 5 goals. I tell you what, one player in particular, Laurent Talai, is a player that I'm loving more and more each week. I thought he was a terrific signing at the time. He did really well with, was it Aldershot last season in the National League? I believe he was from. I saw a lot from him. I think Aldershot did pretty well last year. And he was a player that I thought could have moved up to League 2 quite easily. And maybe a little bit of time to adjust, but, he's more than fitted him. Another couple of goals for him yesterday. Yeah, they're looking the real deal yet at the minute with 4 games to go. I mean, Carlisle, Grimsby, Wimbledon and Gillingham, their last 4. I think the way how it is at the minute, I don't think they'll need much more. I don't think they'll certainly have to win all 4. I think probably 7 or 8 points maybe does it. I'm taking into account, I think, with the rest of the other teams' fixtures, especially with Bradford as well, they've got some. I think they've all got difficult games in one way or another. It was something I was looking at yesterday, and the teams not the top 7 still have to play like 1 or 2 of the teams around them. So it's quite difficult to tell really, and there's going to be a lot more twists and turns, but I think with the way they're going at the minute, with the confidence they've got, with how, with the 5, another clean sheet as well is something that should be mentioned. I don't see how Port Vale don't win the league from here. I think that, clearly out of everyone, they seem the only side that actually want to get promoted at the minute, because no one does. They've had good spells this season. They've had bad spells, but they're hitting this recent very good spell to perfection, and ultimately, that's what will certainly get them automatic promotion. But also, it looks like at the minute will certainly win them the league. As got a great attendance at Vale Park yesterday. I think they had discounted tickets as well. Not really too much to say. 5-0 win against a Bromley side. Their season's done now. I think Andy Woodman said that he still had belief that they'd make the playoffs. I think that, well, they're done for now. In fact, I don't even think there's a think about it. They're done for. But no, terrific from Port Vale. Unbelievable stuff.
Well, yeah, in terms of Bromley, they're now 10 points away with 4 games to go. So doesn't favour them very much, does it, unfortunately? But no, for Port Vale, that's 4 wins on the spin. Like I said, we kind of felt like it with those Bradford, with the Bradford game and Walsall game. The fact that they've won both, bosh, straight through. The only recent slip up they had was Barrow, and Barrow just slip up seems to be that banana skin for just about everyone, as we'll get on to very shortly. But
everyone slips up to Barrow. One thing I'd just quickly say as well, I know we did our final predictions the other day as well. And I think I remember saying I sort of regret not putting Port Vale top now. Nothing against Bradford or anything like that. I just think Port Vale look the real deal at the minute, more so over them. So that's something to think about. I'll come back to you at the end of the season when Bradford have won the league, and those comments are taken out of context. No, is that the way?
Well,
no, that's not. Well.
Knowing us, it'll age like milk.
That's it. Yeah, not so much out of context. That's a different thing.
But yeah, Jay, just a little bit. Can Port Vale be stopped at this point? They've got so much momentum. Everyone else is slipping around them. They're only 3 points clear, but with 4 games left and the momentum they've got combined, can they be stopped?
No, I don't think they can. You look at everyone else around them, and they're finding every game a little bit tricky, and Port Vale are just cruising through the games. They've kept 5 clean sheets in 7, won 6 of them. It's what champions do, and I can just see them going on now and winning it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've summed it up pretty perfectly there, to be fair. And, well, as we say, the only slip up they've had recently was Barrow, and that's the game we're going to go to next. Barrow, of course, beat Walsall 2-0, and Walsall are still losing games and somehow still up there, but not. Yeah, they're just about third somehow still, despite losing constantly at the minute. But Barrow can continue to be a banana skin. I don't know. Is this a case of just Barrow are just that side that are still a little bit awkward, and it's not? We shouldn't be too shocked, or is this really a case of Walsall are in the mud and that this could well be the end of them?
Yeah, maybe a bit of that. I think, Barrow are certainly planning on next season now. They're trying different stuff, but, you can see the philosophy that Andy Wing is trying to install already. There's no pressure now in those sorts of games. Let's just give it a go. See how they get on, and they picked up some good wins and some decent points from those games. Of course, you're looking at Port Vale, Wimbledon recently, the character they showed there, and obviously this one against Walsall. I think I'm at this. Walsall don't have a shot on target in the game, and this was a side. We keep saying that there were so many points clear, and this happened and that happened, and how they were supposed to be the best League Two team that we've ever seen, and it's all fallen quite drastically. I mean, I saw the Walsall reaction yesterday, and they looked, and I saw bits from that, and they looked awful. They didn't deserve to win the game. They deserved nothing from that, and of course that means they're without a winning 10. You can't tell me if. I think even if they did creep into the top 3, I think you might not really get the end of it. Well, Walsall might not really get the end of it, but it's a sense of just creeping over the line. And I mean, yes, of course, it's a promotion. You're not saying no to it. You're going to celebrate to your heart's content. But do they deserve it from this second half of the season? Absolutely not. I question, with their recent form, do they even deserve a playoff place? Because I think there's other teams that are certainly more, I think, in the last few weeks, certainly worthy of it. I look at probably Colchester at the minute, and I think they're probably more deserving of it than Walsall. If they were to drop into the playoffs, I'm really concerned for them at the minute, because obviously, 10 games without a win, and at the minute, they're playing like you don't know where their next win is going to come from. I mean, their next 3 games, we did mention it, Harrogate next, Newport and Accrington. Obviously, on paper, those are 3 good games to have, but it's about doing it. It's just about doing it. And there can't really be any excuses. I mean, look, if they can't even beat those sides, then, I mean, look, I question if they deserve automatic promotion from this run anyway. Even less so from that. Obviously, they go to Crewe final day, which at the minute, Crewe are very close to being out of this playoff race altogether. I don't know. I think there's big question marks at the minute because nothing's going right. I think the fans are getting a little bit relentless, and rightly so. You don't want to see a team. You don't want to see your team go 10 games without a win. Being so far at the top of the league as well, and to collapse like they have done, it's embarrassing. Really, it's embarrassing. Yeah, I did give my confidence with them the other day, but I fear for them in a minute because this is nowhere near good enough, and certainly not nowhere near good enough for a promotion spot.
But yeah, exactly that. And I mean, you alluded to the run in there a little bit. We keep saying, "Oh yes, but favourable fixtures. Surely they'll win one at some point." But that first win is proving to be very elusive, and that is literally the most important one because that's how you stop that spiral, that sort of negative momentum that they seem to have sort of caught themselves in.
But I'd also put my neck on the line here. I think, let's say they go and beat Harrogate. I think they'll go and win the others. Maybe that's just me being optimistic. I don't know, probably. But it's just a thing I could just see happening. It's just one of those things. There's no real other way of putting it. If they can maybe beat Harrogate, there they can. But I said this. I swear I said this against Barrow though. And look what happened.
Well, yeah, it's exactly that. It's a case of once you get the first win, the other ones get easier. But until they get that first win, all of them just seem like a nightmare. Like you don't want to have to go and face Harrogate needing a win because Harrogate are going to sit there playing for a point the whole time, and you've somehow got to break through, having also just had not a single shot on target in your last game. It's a very sort of tricky hole to dig yourself out of. But I suppose because it's Barrow and because of the teams they've already kind of hindered a little bit with previous results. I don't know. Do Barrow deserves at least some credit for stopping yet another team at the top?
Yeah, absolutely, because they're the teams that on paper are the toughest to play against, and they've made them look pretty easy. So to do that will give them some relief and momentum going into next season that they can compete at the top end of the league. So they do deserve quite a bit of credit for it because they're not the easiest games to win.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm just looking at the league table now, and I mean, with Barrow, they were right near the bottom for a while, not in danger of going down, but they were in that sort of like lower mid-table bracket for so long. They're still kind of there. But in terms of the points total, they're actually relatively close to touching the top half of the table, which is an improvement. It's been gradual, but they're getting there. And as you guys have said, it's all about next season for them and how they're building. And you're starting to see the project there, which is an interesting one. I think they'll be an interesting team to keep an eye on with regards to the transfer window over the summer. But coming back to the promotion race, were, of course, more teams playing, and of course, Doncaster AFC Wimbledon finished 1-1. And I remember previewing this and saying both teams 100% need to win this. There has to be a winner, otherwise it's a bad point for both teams. And lo and behold, it's a 1-1 draw, which to me just feels a bit disappointing for both. I mean, just the difference that those extra 2 points would have made, especially with Walsall dropping points, with Walsall and Bradford dropping points, and obviously each other because they're facing each other as well. It's a huge wasted opportunity, surely.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think any sort of winner in this one for either team obviously would have been massive. I mean, if Doncaster would have won it, they'd be on 73. They'd be joint, be on the same mark points with Bradford with that game in hand. And as for Wimbledon, they'd be on 71, only a point behind Walsall, who seem in free fall at the minute. And next thing you know, it's very much on. It's still very much on for Doncaster in particular. I think I agree. I don't think it's the greatest point in the world for either team. Maybe slightly so for Doncaster, dependent on that game in hand. It's not going to be an easy game though against Salford. It sounds like it's coming up, but yeah, I mean, look, 1-1. Obviously, this was a game that I was keeping a close eye on myself, because with the chance that we could have closed the gap on Wimbledon if Grimsby would have won, but we won't talk about that. And yeah, look, 1-1, a couple of red cards, including that Billy Sharp one was on the pitch for a minute, and he was showing his marching orders for what was it? Was it a headbutt? I think he was sent off for. Or what claimed. It was quite hard to tell in the video I saw. But I mean, obviously, if you're a manager, you'd be fuming at that. Just come on, hadn't touched the ball, and you're getting yourself sent off in a daft way from what the referee deemed. I think maybe a draw was probably. It's bad for both, but I think probably on the cards. I think probably after Wimbledon's red card, we know how good they can be defensively, and they sort of did well. I think probably at times to hold on for that long. I think conceding with 10 minutes left, sort of late-ish again. To deny them 3 points is not ideal for them. I think they still need a few more wins from somewhere because they're a little bit on and off at the minute. But saying that, they are, they've only lost one of their last 6 games, but 3 of them have been draws. And of course, they've got some very difficult games coming up themselves. So this will be a real true test of their character. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting because I was in Doncaster about 10:30ish before the game, and you just see a load of Donny and Wimbledon fans, and I was just sort of in two minds, like, go on Donny. It was mainly go on Donny, to be honest. More the fact, I make it sound like I'm AFC Wimbledon's biggest hater. I'm not. I'm MK Dons' in these last few episodes, but it's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? And how tight this league is, and how just plain awful it is. And that's the situation that we currently find ourselves. But that's just personal stuff with Town. But yeah, it's just a bit. I think just a little bit meh for both, to be honest. I think there's pros and cons to both, but ultimately, I think it's just a bit meh.
Well, yeah, I suppose the only sort of saving grace of it is just that all these other teams drop points. So in a way, they've kind of got away with one a little bit. Imagine if Bradford and Walsall had both won, they would have been gone. And with so few games left, that gap feels so much bigger to sort of close. But as things stand, they've kind of just about got away with it. Although, I mean, maybe the red cards could have a bit more of a standing impact. I mean, Sharp hasn't necessarily started as many games for Donny, but he is a regular sub. I mean, they've still got players like Street, Ironside, more than capable. But I do wonder with AFC if this could maybe affect them a little more. Reeves is their captain. So you take him out the side, immediately a bit of concern there. I mean, Smith's done well. He's chipped in with a couple of goals recently. I know that. But then they also took off Stevens after 30 minutes to try and shake things around. So I'm a little confused on the whole tactical thing there. I'm not quite sure how they're going to figure that one out, especially with, just 4 games to go, tricky games, and their main source of goals isn't scoring goals. Could this be just another thing on the list that kind of makes things a bit more tricky for them?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got a tough run in. They've lost their captain, like you said. The form they're on, you don't really fancy them to get playoffs. Like, I know you predicted them to fall outside, although that's probably a little bit of bias in there.
Well, I said them or not. Either one. Could be both at this rate, honestly.
Yeah, so it'll be difficult for them, but it's how they react to that now, how they replace someone like Jake Reeves in that midfield, because he gives the freedom to Smith to attack. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one because the results have been all over the place for everyone at the minute. Well, as we keep saying, no one other than Port Vale seems to want it. So it's so hard to sort of predict what's going to happen or who's going to wake up at the right moment. Because I mean, it's getting late now. You've got 4 games left. If there was ever a time to really kick on, it's now. But one side that definitely hasn't done that was a team that's played on it was a Friday, wasn't it? Notts, and of course they lost 3-1 to Salford. So Jake, I'll let you kick this one off. Talk us through that game.
Yeah, it was a bit of a quiet game until just before half time, where Notts were back to their last season best of giving goals away, where shot came off 2 of their players and went in, which sort of changed the game a lot because they just didn't really come out in the second half. They made 3 changes, but still didn't really get a grip of the game, and we just dominated. And usually we just don't sort of dominate a game like that, but we got control of it. It's probably our performance of the season, really, because we never looked in doubt. We went 2-0 up. Even when we conceded, we usually react badly, but we created some good chances and then finally got that third, which is fully justified. But it makes that game on Tuesday now against Doncaster even more important for us. Because if we can go on to win it, then there's still that outside shot of the playoffs. But you look at our running, and all of them have got points because they need points because they've got something to play for. So it'll be interesting to see.
Wait, I mean, how are you feeling about your playoff chance? As you say, let's assume you win that game in the midweek. You'd then be 2 points off 7th, which, as things stand, is Grimsby. Make things nice and interesting. But with those 4 games to go, I mean, I feel like Salford have been a bit of a weird team. We kind of ruled them out, and then suddenly they appear again, and maybe they've got a chance, and then we ruled them out again, and then they've got a chance. Where are you at with it at the minute?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure because before the season, my expectation wasn't to get playoffs, but if you look at our running, we've got Accrington at home, which is a must-win. Then we've got Morecambe, who we could potentially send down, so they're going to have to play well. Colchester at home, which usually our bogey team, and then Carlisle away, which the way they're going, they could need to win that to stay up, but they could already be down, so it does depend. So we do have an outside shot, but I think we will just come a bit short of the playoffs.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting. I mean, there's 3 games there. I'd reckon you'd hope your team would pick up 9 points there. Whether they will or not, with this league, honestly, who knows? But moving on to Notts, it's a second flat performance in a row, isn't it? It's starting to get a little bit concerning, and I mean, it doesn't get any easier. They've got Bradford next.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you there. But yeah, I watched this game on Friday night as well. It's obviously a game that obviously key in interest. Obviously, it's another one where I was, more town, of course. But
just watching all the games.
Yeah, just watch it because they're all big games at this stage. With these sort of teams and all that. And yeah, it was certainly a case in which Salford deserved victory. They were the much better team throughout. Quite a few players caught the eye. Kelly Moy in particular. I thought he had a really good game. But Notts, yeah. I thought they were poor. I thought they were really poor on the night. And I think it probably signified with that triple change at halftime because what was it? They went in, one shot that was off target. There was a lot of players that I felt were hiding. I thought, and I think it probably has been that way for a little bit. I mean, the run that they've been on has been, again, far from ideal. Not the worst run in the world, but it's certainly not great either. And certainly one, they're by no means safe in this playoff race. And if they're not careful, they can very quickly drop out of it. And you mentioned the run of games that they've got coming up with Bradford next at Valley Parade. We know that Bradford are good at home anyway. And I think they'll be probably rightly so, even more up for it because they'll want to right some wrongs after that defeat to Swindon. And I don't see much confidence in Notts at the minute. It's just a bit, I don't know, I saw... I thought that was a bit dull. I mean, I don't really know. They've improved. Look, we've mentioned this all season long. They've obviously improved defensively to what they were because those two were way too gung ho for Luke Williams. But he had a lot of credit in the bank. A lot of questions are being asked about Stuart Maynard. I don't think, from what I've seen of Notts, I don't think they've really took to him, to be honest. I think we're starting to see why. I was far from convinced when we played them and they beat us. That performance. I'm going off that performance alone. Really, you can't tell me that's a playoff worthy performance. You just can't. I don't think the subs did much either when they came on. Obviously, they had that goal, but it just felt like when they scored, that should give them a lift. If anything, it gave Salford a lift. Because obviously they hit the post and then Garbett went and scored from that chance. That was a really good goal as well. So, I do question Notts a little bit at the minute, and I have done, for the past couple of weeks. But obviously, watching that, I think those questions have become louder. Certainly from their fan base as well. I think it's quite hard at the minute for a Notts fan to, I think, probably remain positive as it is. A lot of people losing faith in Maynard and all that sort of stuff. And I think for the level of squad that they've had, I think they've got to be doing much better than what they have done. I think Notts. I really do. They're just that sort of team, that sort of place, that sort of, just that sort of club. Of course, it's easy to say going off club and all that, but with the players that they've got, I feel like they have been off it, quite a bit off it throughout the whole season, to be honest.
Yeah, they've definitely had sort of, they've had their moments where they've kind of just collapsed a little bit, and I don't know, maybe some tactical decisions from Maynard have been a little bit strange. I mean, maybe it's just me. Obviously, I don't watch Notts every single game, but I personally feel like someone like Abbott should be starting, for example. Stuff like that. It's just little things that, if you get them wrong, they start to add up and lead to flat performances like that. And I don't know. I don't know if it's what to think of Maynard really at this point, because you feel like he has these moments with Notts where, I don't know, he has them in tough positions, and then they suddenly pick things up again. It's like, okay, maybe he actually kind of does know what he's doing, but he then kind of falls back down the same rabbit hole. So is he actually learning anything? It's a bit of a tricky conundrum. I don't know what you guys make of that.
I think I remember when they appointed him at the time, it was obviously, I felt it was a pretty big jump. I think it was a more than deserved Football League jump for Stuart Maynard. The job he did at Wealdstone for a number of years should be commended. And obviously, going into the EFL, his first, I think it's his first like proper full-time like role. I always got the sense that I think maybe the club was too big for him. I think maybe coming from a club like that probably didn't have many expectations in the National League. With Notts, there's plenty of expectation. And, I think you probably noticed last season, but obviously, defensively, they were something else last year. They did try and steady a ship. And you can argue, there's been times in which they have last year. But you also, you see that run that they went on and they finished about mid-table in the end. And for where they were for most of the season, they were way off it. It's a difficult one to say. It's a difficult one. Because he's obviously, a nice guy and everything else and all that. I just got the sense that, it's a big jump. Notts are a big club. They're a big club for this level. They're a League One club, easy. I think the recent weeks in particular, I've certainly seen sort of why there's some people that are not on board with him, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. And there's been different seeds of that, I think, throughout the season.
Well, I mean, as you say, there's a lot of pressure on that job, and I mean, when it does go badly, you've got quite a lot of fans there that are gonna say their piece on it. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, he's got 4 more games to try and put things right and make sure at a bare minimum they at least get playoffs and put up a decent fight in those, because I think it would be a bit of a disaster, to be honest, if they dropped out entirely.
It'll be a complete failure if they don't even reach the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's unacceptable for a club like Notts.
For sure, but that wasn't the only game that was played in the sort of midweek. We also had Crewe, who also apparently don't want playoffs. Managed to lose to a Cheltenham side that I think had lost 4 on the bounce before that. I mean, they were so far on the beach for sort of already, Cheltenham, but then they've kind of appeared with a 3-2 win, and it kind of feels quite damning for Crewe, to be honest, because this kind of felt like it should have been the guaranteed 3 points. So I don't know. Is this kind of the end? It's a 5-point gap at the minute, and so it's still technically possible. But with 4 games left, is that too little, too late?
I think, as again another game I watched. I mean, you mentioned about Cheltenham's. Obviously, they've been really poor last few games. They've lost they lost like 4 in a row before that, hadn't scored in any of those games. So the fact that they've gone and went to Crewe and scored 3, I think probably tells its own story. I thought Crewe were again a bit similar to Notts. I thought they were poor. I thought they were really poor on the night. And there's been certain moments in that game which probably Cheltenham could have scored more. They missed the penalty, and they had 1 or 2 other chances. It just felt. I said to you the other night, I was, I've kept a close eye on Crewe. Obviously, we've played them, and obviously keeping an eye on the results, obviously because of this running. And how much, I was even talking to how much I do like Lee Bell. I do like him. And I get the frustrations of Crewe, of their fans, because I think I did listen to his interview, and I got the sense that he probably knew that some of those players aren't good enough. For this run that they've been in since the turn of the year. But I also don't think he's helped himself. Like I do feel like there is a sense of he's negative. I do think he is quite negative, and I get that. I just don't think it just doesn't seem a very Crewe way of playing. Like that's what I said. I feel like Crewe have their way of playing. They bring through youngsters and they do this attacking. This exciting brand of football. I've not seen that in Crewe. these last few weeks. I mean, I remember going there a couple of weeks ago when they beat us 2-0. They know that's not the Crewe I know. I get that obviously, needs must to win games and all that, but it just wasn't what I recall them at all. And maybe I think from where they are or where they were, the fact that the season is near enough done. They've got Colchester next, and there's absolutely no excuse. If they do not win that, then that's them done. They're already down to 11th as it is. Like, Salford have that game in hand. They've got the same amount of points as Salford. You easily back Salford more than you back Crewe at the minute. Obviously, I still actually think even if they beat Colchester, there's too much to do. There's just too much to do. They've been way off it. I think these last few months, and I think it certainly culminated with that. And I get the question marks surrounding Bell. I really do. It's not a good look. Not a good look. Cheltenham deserved that win the other night.
Well, I'm starting to wonder if the mentality is going a little bit, where, as you say, there's potential negative tactics there, and when you suddenly stop getting the results as well, it gets even harder. I personally feel, having watched some of those goals back, this felt very Philip Marshall of last season. Watching some of that goalkeeping, personally feel like he could have maybe saved one or two of them at least. But it's a tricky one with them. I don't know. I don't think they've got enough at this stage. And then, like I say, as you lose that mentality, that's that once you've lost that, that's it. And if anything, it becomes a concern for next season as well. Because let's assume they don't get it, you then have that risk of a potential hangover as well, which we've certainly seen at Dons. Jake, I don't know, any extra thoughts on Crewe?
Yeah, I was just thinking back to their summer window, which for a side that got playoffs never felt that convincing of a side that were going to go and push on or get playoffs again. So I'm not totally surprised, but I would give Lebo more time, because you see the sides that are at the top of the table are the sides that have had managers for the longest and given them time. So I would keep Lebo for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I don't know. Maybe he does deserve an element of credit. It's just, I don't know if they're starting to lose their identity a little bit, maybe, which I think Jordan was sort of saying a bit there.
I think at the same time, sorry, just to follow up on Jake's point, they limped into the playoffs last season. They proper limped. This is not something I don't think that, this is just this season. I think they sort of had it last season as well. And it sort of just carried on, I think, more to a more extreme extent this season. And it's, yeah. And one thing I didn't mention as well, that's another 3 goals they've conceded at home. They concede a lot of goals at home, don't they? When they do lose at home, they do concede quite a high amount of goals, which, for a side in which, they're pride on for, 5 at the back from what it looks like, and, being defensively solid, I'm not sure that argument bears any scrutiny. There's no excuses. Cheltenham haven't scored in the last 4, they've scored 3. It's just simple, isn't it? I don't know what more you want to say. No.
Well, yeah, it's just very negative at the minute, isn't it? I don't know. I think that could well be their season. But moving on to the next one, I'm going to keep you talking, Jordan.
I'd rather you didn't. I can't be bothered. That's why you're hosting this.
You're going to have to talk about it. You're going to have to talk about it. You drew 2-2 with Harrogate. What happened there then?
The honest answer is I don't know. I really don't know. 85 minutes. We're 2-0 up in the game. I wouldn't say it was our best performance in the world. I think we have played better in past games. But one thing I would say is the fact I thought we were comfortable. I thought we were really comfortable. There wasn't really indication that Harrogate were really going to do anything. And you do look at the goals back we have conceded, and they're quite poor goals. Taking nothing away from Ellis Taylor's finish, I do think he was given a lot of space to run into, though. I think maybe a couple of question marks have come on Harvey Rogers, but I think you can maybe understand why, because he's running back and just trying to get back, maybe track back. It sort of loses that momentum a little bit. So maybe a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And again, we've conceded from a corner. We've not dealt with it, and it's come off Danny Rose, and it's just really unfortunate. It's just a really unfortunate goal to concede, but 2-0 up, 85 minutes, so close to the season when you're needing all the points you can get. It was a massive kick in the gut yesterday. And I'm scared that, this will be one of the games in which if we don't make the playoffs, this will be one of the games in which we'll look back on and say this was a wasted opportunity. I think that and the game we lost to Accrington 3-2, because I thought they were absolutely dreadful, yet they found a way to beat us. I think those two games in particular will be the ones I look back on and think, what a missed opportunity that was. Something about Harrogate. It's just something about them. Every time they're a pain in our backsides for God knows how long. And it was going so well. Because 85 minutes, we're 5 points clear in that playoff place. By full time, it's 1. And the mood changed. It was a horrible trip back yesterday. I wasn't angry or anything like that. I was just so deflated. And it sort of dampened what was the League 2 goal of the season in that game as well. That it deserves its mention, because that Kieran Green goal, oh my God, the audacity to try it from there is ridiculous in itself. He's 70 yards out, and he's done Belshaw from there. The audacity to try that is insane, and that's credit to Wartall for the player that he has made Kieran Green this season. He has been certainly, I think, our most important player. And I think, and we sort of lost, our way when he went off. We lost, Evan Corey went off, Doug Tharn went off. Artell was a little bit critical of him getting cramped playing in the middle of the back three, but which I thought was a little bit odd. But I don't know. I think the subs killed us, but there wasn't really much you could have done about a couple of them, because the other one was enforced. It seemed pretty much. That's Van Thorsen goal is really good as well. He's took that really well, and I'm glad to see him back on the score sheet again. And he's deserved it for these last few months he's had. But from that position where you've not against a side that's not really threatened, really. It's an awful way. It felt like a defeat. There's no other way of putting it. And obviously, Swindon next. You've obviously got the Swindon. You've obviously got the Holloway factor in that. I don't give a monkeys about Holloway on Friday. I'd rather we just focused on ourselves, because it's a massive game of football, and I think it's one that we've got to win. Let's just take all the emotion that we have of him to one side and just massively focus on that game. It's not going to be an easy game as this, because this Swindon team, my God, they're dangerous. Obviously, with Port Vale to come after that. We've got a tough set of games coming up, but I think it's also reminding ourselves that we hold the cards at the minute. We're still at 1 point in it. It's still in our hands at the minute. We've still got to do what we can do. And like I said, if we do miss out, then yes, so be it. I never expected this at the start of the season. I do get the impression now, obviously, I mentioned those games, but maybe there might be a sense of disappointment that if we don't make the playoffs. There's that side to it. And it'll be games like that in which we'll look on and think, what if? Because for 85 minutes, it was going pretty well. And it was gutted at the end.
Well, yeah, I can imagine. Just looking at the stats of that game, Harrogate have had 2 shots on target and 2 goals. One of the goals wasn't even a shot on target, because it was an own goal. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, 2 moments of, maybe switching off, luck doesn't quite go your way. It's as you say, it's one of those you look back on, that's the 2 points, that's the difference between us being where we want to be and just missing out. I think what's more interesting for me now is it's the mentality, because as you say, that feels like a loss. It's how you now bounce back going into these next ones. And I don't know, Jake, do you think that Grimsby will have that sort of bounce back, sort of fighting sort of ability to get themselves back on track? They are still in the playoffs. It's just 2 points worse off than they probably should have been.
Yeah, they'll certainly want to bounce back, and they'll be hoping that it was Friday tomorrow, but unfortunately they do have to wait. But they do have a point to prove a little bit now that they will get over the line and they will get in the playoffs, because to be, like Jordan said, 5 points clear with 5 minutes left and to only be 1 point will be disappointing, but I'm sure they'll bounce back.
Just to mention something as well, I know we've got other games to do. This team have got a lot of credit in the bank, and they have bounced back in tricky periods like this. Yes, yesterday was gut wrenching for them, and there'd have been no one happy in that change room yesterday. But this team have done it time and time again this season where they have responded to adversity. I've got no doubts they'll come again.
Well, no, I mean they'll absolutely need to, because currently Colchester breathing down your necks a little bit. They're one of the few teams that you're looking at and thinking, actually, they've been relatively consistent. I know they lost a couple of games a few weeks back, but aside from that, they've been strong for a reasonable amount of time now. They left it late. 88th minute for the opening goal and then 90+4 for the second, but I mean, they have overcome Newport at Newport. So it's a case of, it was probably a little bit of a flat performance in comparison to what they'd like, but they got the result, and that's the important thing.
Job done, isn't it? It's 3 points. They'll want to move on. I think that's probably what made yesterday's Grimsby defeat that more gut wrenching, was the fact they won it late. That was the thing. With them 89th minute, obviously it's a massive 3 points for the fact that we've dropped points. They've got some tricky games to come. Crewe next as well. It's not really much to say. Just any point at this stage of the season is key. Any points you can get your hands on, and obviously 2 late goals at the end. I mean, Newport. Newport did hold on. I said I always had my doubts about Newport when we did the predictions in the week. I've always had my doubts about this Newport side and how big's their bottle. And they came close, but eventually not close enough. And ultimately, it's another defeat, and you see that Kieran's not happy again, which was another thing. But it's a huge win. It's a huge win. I don't think you can really say much more, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think let's touch on Newport a little bit, because as you've mentioned, Kieran very clearly was not happy with that result, and I don't know, their media's been a little bit quiet. What are we thinking about Nelson Jardim at the minute? He's got to be in trouble by now, surely, Jake.
Yeah, I think he should be in trouble, and I think Kieran did a TikTok on it that any other manager on that run of form would be in trouble. But there's a part of me that thinks the owner brought him in for a reason. I think he'll stick by him because they've signed a lot of young players, and it does feel like a 2-year project of those young players. So I think he might get given the time, but I'm really not sure he should be.
Is it a case in which Newport's owner Hugh Jenkins has maybe underestimated this league a little bit? Because I'm starting to get that impression.
Oh, yeah, possibly. I don't know. I think it's always a risk with the transfer strategy they have as well, because there was a lot of unknowns with that squad, with a lot of these players, and not all that much experience as well. And it's a case of, I don't think they've necessarily used the experience they have as often as they should. They've also lost a couple of experienced players midway through the season. They've had all sorts of sort of confusing situations with the whole striker situation, loaning out players they probably should have kept. And I don't know. I think maybe a lack of understanding more than sort of underestimating it would maybe be the way I'd suggest things have gone. But I don't know.
Perhaps. I just think, obviously, there's 4 games left. I don't think he can take next season. I really don't, because they have been really poor for a lot of it. Yes, they've had a couple of spells where they've had a few wins in a row, but they've also gone on like long winless runs now. And then you're seeing it. This is like the second or third time they've gone on this sort of run this season. So it's not a one-off. It's not a one-off at all. I just think maybe his inexperience is maybe coming into play a little bit. Well, I think many have pointed out, nice guy, but I don't know how you can carry on with it. It's clearly not working, and I don't think it will work.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. I don't know if they'll just try and ride it out till end of the season and then make their decisions. But
I think they'll probably do that. I think they'll probably just give it, just get it done, and then they'll assess their options from there. Although, judging by Newport's Twitter, they have been very quiet, so there might be a case that they might pull the plug now, but only time will tell on that, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're still on course for their classic 18th place finish, so we'll have to wait and see. But two more games to cover, one of which is perhaps a surprise contender for playoffs. Chesterfield have gone and beaten Fleetwood 3-0, and actually this looked like a pretty strong performance. I mean, they've three shots on target, it's three goals, but they seem to create reasonable chances. I don't know. Do we think they have enough in the tank to threaten that final playoff spot?
I think they'll certainly give it a go. Obviously, their recent run has been, quite impressive. Just the one defeat in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and obviously that defeat was a pretty poor one. So, and I don't think they'll want to mention that. But yeah, look, 3-0 victory against Fleetwood. Fleetwood are on the beach, so they're certainly not out of it. You do look at their next couple of games. I mean, Wimbledon and Bradford are obviously two difficult games. Obviously, the two sides that are up there. But then you see the last two. They play Morecambe and Accrington. They're easily winnable. They're easily winnable games. So I think it might be tight. If I can get a few points here and there out of Wimbledon and Chesterfield, and then you're looking at those two games and you're actually thinking, hold on, if they do well in those two games, there could be something on here. They're certainly not one to rule out. Obviously, I don't think really time is on their side, but they're only 4 points adrift. It's not out of the question just because Salford might have a game in hand or Grimsby are 4 points clear or anything like that. There's a load of twists and turns yet to come from everyone, and not just them, but for everyone else as well. So who knows? Who knows? I think they'll certainly give it a go right to the last, though. I think with their form that they're on, I can't see them not.
Well, yeah, exactly that. I think, as you say, there is probably those next two games. If it's still mathematically possible, and they're not too far out the race going into the final two games of the season, you'd probably fancy them actually, because by that point, Morecambe are probably down. Hopefully, nothing against Morecambe. I just want to be mathematically safe myself now, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I personally still don't think they've quite got enough. I think they've got a project there that could be quite deadly next season. I think it's a case of they've just had maybe too many setbacks this season for it to be enough. But then again, I mean, League Two, anything could happen. Any additional thoughts on that particular game, Jake?
I completely agree with what you just said. Twists and turns to be had. They're hitting form at the right time. They got players back from injury at the right time. They could do it, but I think they might be a couple of points short at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm agreed with you there, and yeah, I mean, there's totally not one more game to cover, and we're totally going to head off air now because we don't have to talk about the last one. We really don't. Unfortunately,
I would say it's pretty meaningless either way. You're not exactly entirely safe yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're still not mathematically safe. That's just, yeah. We lost 1-0 to Gillingham last minute. Really didn't like that goal, just for multiple reasons. It felt very Ainsworthy. Yeah, it was one of those games. It was quite a flat game for both sides, really. I think we kind of neutralised them, and they neutralised us. I know their fans are probably going to come on and say, "Oh yes, we had 9 shots and 5 on target or something, and we had none," which is yes, true, but didn't really threaten us too much.
You're good at the no shots on target thing, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, well, we did technically have the goal in the back of the net. That shows you how far away my brain is right now. We had the ball in the back of the net. But sadly, Hogan was just offside, and that's kind of the story of us currently, to be honest. Gilby's fired one just over that, would have been a lovely one if it went in. It was very close. We've had a couple of nearly moments where we've somehow managed to miss the ball entirely when the ball's been dragged back across goal. It was kind of one of those games. We definitely didn't deserve to win it, but I also don't think we really deserved to lose it. I feel like 0-0 probably would have been, fair enough. They forced a couple of saves out of McGillivray, but he wasn't tested too much. A keeper of his ability isn't going to let those sorts of goals in. It's just a case of we've switched off at the very, very end of the game. Free kick situation. Masterson decided to move to back post. No one's followed in there. Easier header across goal, and Joe White decides you don't need to mark your man if he's 2 yards from the goal line. Can't make it up. Honestly, it was the same thing with their other major chance where they hit the bar. Joe White just decides, you know what, I'm not going to track that run. I know he's just come back from injury, but come on, it's the basics. It's just how many more ways of losing can we possibly find at this point? It almost feels like we may as well just turn around and just start shooting towards our own goal. We might actually have a bit more luck.
Can you do that 1 week in a couple of weeks?
Honestly, if we're mathematically safe, absolutely. Because if we're helping you lot out and sending that lot out of the playoffs, then by all means. But yeah, I don't know. I think there was something else with this game as well, because it wasn't just a case of, it's just another flat game. I think it was also this whole thing with Paul Warne, because I know for a fact he was supposed to be joining us officially on that Friday. So something's clearly gone wrong there last minute, and we don't necessarily know what that is just yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a case of I don't know, maybe a Huddersfield or someone coming in and snapping him up for a League One job. But for whatever reason, he has rejected us after our extensive process of deciding who's best, which I'm still very, very critical of, which is a shame because I personally feel like that would have been an outrageously good appointment. The guy's got 4 League One promotions to his name, has never dropped as low as League Two, and to be fair, that's probably part of the reason he's rejected us, because he doesn't need to risk a League Two job. We've got the facilities and the money, all the rest of it, to build a project there, but I don't know. Maybe it just looks like too broken of a squad for him to risk his career on, I suppose, which is fair enough. I'm not really critical of him for avoiding us, because honestly, fair enough. I'm more just critical of us because it's taken us this long to come to a decision of, we've spent over a month deciding we want a manager, and apparently one of the last ones is Paul Warne, and it took us that long to decide, what, Paul Warne is the best out of this lot. I don't think that it should have taken that long. If he was one of the options, why has it taken that long? I
can just say something as well. You're also looking at it now that whoever you get now is clearly not first choice.
Yeah,
he's clearly not.
Which is something I'm very concerned about. Whoever comes in, it's going to be underwhelming. The fact that everyone knows we could have had Paul Warne, even if whoever we bring in is good, because there are still some good options out there. Whoever comes in now, it's just going to feel a bit sad. Because initially I wanted Michael Duff, but if we got Michael Duff now, I'd still be a little bit disheartened because we don't have Paul Warne. It's just one of those things, and like I said, I just don't understand why it's taken this long. If Paul Warne was an option from the start, why could we have not made that decision weeks ago? And even if he rejects us anyway, we can move on and just get straight on to the next one, rather than wasting another couple of weeks losing games that we just don't need to lose. Gladwin is clearly given up. He's clearly given up on this squad and any idea of actually ever having any success. He's just going through the motions and hoping that at some point we'll be mathematically safe and we won't have to worry, which we're still not somehow. Because put it this way, while we don't have a manager, we're not picking up a single point. I can guarantee you that now. If we can't beat Gillingham, that's just how it is, unfortunately.
4 games left. You're nearly there. Then you can just
forget. I'm not convinced until the manager comes in. I'm not convinced.
And you just forget about football for a while. That's probably the best.
Can I forget about it forever? Is that an option?
Well, yeah, look, by all means, if you really want. Yeah, go ahead.
No, of course not. I'm Don's through and through. Loyalty, all the rest of it. But yeah,
a bit like Winkleman forgot that Wimbledon exists and decided to move to Milton Keynes.
well,
Yeah, that's
what can I say?
Yeah.
Oh, way to rattle everyone at the very end. Lovely. But anyway, I think I could go on about that for a long time because there's a lot of problems with my club that I would very much happily discuss for, well, not happily, but I could easily discuss for a very long time. But we don't have time for that, so let's just get out of here and get on to the midweek episode whenever that comes on. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and obviously thanks Jordan and Jake for joining me on this one. If you did enjoy, leave a like, comment, all the rest of it. We do try to interact with you guys as much as we possibly can, and we do appreciate all the support. Obviously, as I mentioned at the very beginning, please do subscribe. We're so close to 1,000, and yeah, I mean, we'll just see you on the next one, and hopefully it'll be a bit of a happier one in the midweek. See you next time.